here in London, we've been seeing double-digit appreciation numbers for the last couple of years. And even during COVID, we've continued to see demand outstrip supply, which is putting a lot of pressure on prices, and we're seeing prices inch up. But with all that said, you can still actually find properties that meet the 1% rule here in London, Ontario. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the London, Ontario real estate market. So you guys are constantly hitting me up wanting to hear my opinions on local Canadian real estate markets, so let's do it. But before I get into the London market, let me know if there's any other real estate markets here in Canada that you would like my opinion on. Jump in the comment section, name the city, and I'll make sure in a future video we cover it. But London, Ontario, first things first, we should probably cover my biases. Pretty much 95% of my portfolio right now is in London, Ontario, so obviously I'm a strong proponent of London, but I honestly do believe that that's with good reason. It's not like I'm just trying to pump up this market. I've been investing in this market for over 10 years now. But let's talk about why I've chosen to invest in the London, Ontario market. First, from an overall perspective, what we should understand is London is uniquely situated halfway between Detroit and Toronto on the 401 corridor. And if you didn't know, the 401 corridor is the busiest highway corridor in North America. So there's a lot of business and just a lot of freight going down the 401. Beyond that, again, because it's halfway between Detroit and Toronto, or halfway between Windsor and Toronto, it's also a regional center and hub. So we see a lot of things like hospitals. We've got 3 major hospitals here in London, Ontario, as well as Western University and Fanshawe College, which again really create a strong employment base as well as a strong baseline or floor for demand when it comes to our rental units. Beyond that, what I find really encouraging about the London market long term is the fact that our affordability is so much lower than other markets compared to, say, Kitchener, Guelph, or the Greater Toronto area. And as we see the baby boomers age and progress into retirement, I suspect that we're going to see a lot of people choose to relocate and retire into London, where they can maybe sell their $1 million house in Mississauga or Milton and then move to London, buy a house that's equally as nice or maybe even nicer for $500,000, and then still have $500,000 to live off of as their retirement nest egg. And what's great, because we've got such a robust medical school and the 3 hospitals and a pharmaceutical and medical industry here in London, we've got a lot of specialists. It's going to make for a great retirement community for anyone looking to retire to a city with great affordability while still also getting all the amenities that you expect from a much larger city when it comes to the medical field. So then taking a step outside of that, the other factors that I really see encouraging when it comes to London, Ontario is a diverse employment base. So a lot of people have a bias or a misconception that London is another auto manufacturing city like Windsor, Ontario. And while auto manufacturing is definitely a large proponent of our employment base, it's important to understand that when we're looking at automotive jobs, we've almost got just as many creative digital arts jobs in London. So if you're going to call us an automotive city, you also got to call us a creative digital art city. I've never heard anyone ever claim that we're that or claim that we're that in a bad way. So again, we've actually got a pretty balanced employment picture when it comes to London. Beyond that, the vacancy rate. Pre-COVID, we were rocking around a 2% vacancy rate, which again puts us in that range of being in a landlord's market where demand is outpacing supply when it comes to rental units. Now, unfortunately here in London, Ontario, we do have pain in the ass things like rental licenses. And while that's a frustration for a lot of landlords, this is one of those problems or profits moments. You can either see it as, man, this is such bullshit, I gotta go through this and other cities don't have to do it, or, hey, this is actually going to discourage a lot of people from wanting to be a landlord and they're going to look for greener pastures, which means I'm going to have less competition here in London, Ontario. Then moving into affordability, like we talked about in Windsor, Ontario in an earlier video, which, side note, if you guys want, we'll throw it up in the eye there and you can jump over and watch the Windsor, Ontario market. But just like Windsor, London benefits from the same minimum wage rate as the rest of Ontario. So again, we're looking at a $14 to $15 an hour minimum wage rate. And if we assume a full-time employee is working 2,000 hours a year, that means that they're making $30,000 a year in income. Again, the average Canadian spends 30 to 40% of their income on shelter, meaning that that minimum wage earner can likely afford about $800 a month in rent. So if you're looking at renting out a one bedroom and you're renting out for $800 in London, it means that your floor for demand is extremely strong because anyone working full-time at a minimum wage job can afford to rent your apartment. Now, if you're looking to rent out a two-bedroom apartment and you're looking to rent it out for $1,600 a month, again, that shows a certain level of baseline demand. If you have two minimum wage earners living in that household, they're going to be easily able to afford renting that $1,600 a month apartment. And again, right now here in London, our average one bedroom rents are probably around $1,000 a month, and our average two bedroom rents are around $1,200, maybe $1,300 a month. So from an affordability perspective, it's a really strong indicator that people can afford it, and because we've got a low vacancy rate and a relatively balanced employment picture, pre-COVID we were around 6-7% unemployment at worst, and sometimes we were drifting closer to 5%. It really shows a strong floor for demand when it comes to your rental units here in London, Ontario. Beyond that, because we are on that 401 corridor, we're an easy commute to larger, more expensive cities and markets like Kitchener-Waterloo or the western end of Toronto. And with COVID, we've already seen a huge shift towards telecommuting or online work from home. And if this trend continues, which I suspect we will, because one, it seems like COVID is probably here to stay. But in addition to that, a lot of businesses have already adapted and adjusted to this new reality. And with this new reality will likely come a lot of significant cost savings, because if they can essentially offload the cost of an office or a space onto their employees by having their employees work from home, that's going to create substantial savings for certain corporations. So if we continue to see a transition towards telecommuting and working from home, markets like London are really going to stand to benefit from this. Because if now maybe you only have to go into work once or twice a week, all of a sudden maybe making that 2-hour commute to the west end of Toronto from London doesn't look so atrocious as it did when you were having to drive there 5 days a week. And if you didn't know, there's already been people commuting from London to Toronto for an extended period of time. We've had buses for, say, like businesses like TD. And TD would literally take a busload of employees from London to downtown Toronto into the Bay Street financial market on a daily basis. That's already been happening. And we're likely going to see things like that continue to happen more and more, but on a less frequent basis, which makes it easier for employees to choose to live in markets outside of where their job is located. So again, for a multitude of factors, whether you're looking at retirement or telecommuting, I think London is uniquely positioned to really benefit. Beyond that, here in London, we've been seeing double-digit appreciation numbers for the last couple of years. And even during COVID, we've continued to see demand outstrip supply, which is putting a lot of pressure on prices, and we're seeing prices inch up. But with all that said, you can still actually find properties that meet the 1% rule here in London, Ontario. And again, a quick reminder, the 1% rule is one of the best rules of thumbs or indicators you can have for quickly analyzing whether a property is likely to cash flow. So in summary, here in London, Ontario, regardless of the investment strategy you're looking to implement, there's likely a way to implement your strategy in the London market. So whether you're looking at the niche of wholesaling, wholetailing, flipping, doing BRRRR investments, simple buy and holds, Airbnb, or potentially more exotic strategies like rent to own, or maybe a vendor take back out of a deal in order to maximize profits, all those are very practical and you can easily accomplish it here in London, Ontario. So what I'd love to hear is, if you are currently investing in London, Ontario, what is your niche? What is the strategy that you're implementing? Let us know in the comment section down below, and share with me and your fellow audience members what your analysis is in regards to the London market. Do you see it continuing to trend up? Do you think will we see employment stay strong here in London? Do you think will rents continue to increase? Because we've seen substantial rent increases here in London, Ontario ever since 2016. I'd love to know. Jump in the comments and let me and your fellow viewers know. But otherwise, if there's other markets that you would like to see me discuss in regards to the Canadian real estate scene, jump in the comment section, name the city, and I'll make sure in a future video that we cover it. But if you're enjoying these local market updates and analysis from myself, smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.